Hi Nat 5, so we're looking at evolution of species and in particular the concept of natural selection. So really you have to start with Darwin because he is the name that is mainly associated with this. Okay, so he published a very famous book on the origin of species in 1859, and a lot of the main theories of this were published in that book, and that's where it first got major prominence. He wasn't the only one who was looking at these theories. Alfred Wallace was also in this time, but it's Darwin's that really got the publicity and followed through. And it could be considered so important that you actually even have things in terms of evolution. You talk about Darwinism, pre-Darwinism. I mean, it's that important. So just to give you the background of this, okay, Darwin at the age of 20 went on a very, very famous survey ship because he went on it, called the HMS Beagle. And this survey ship basically took 5 years to travel around the globe, and as it was travelling, Darwin collected thousands of specimens and detailed his observations about them, and that helped to form the theory, which he then brought to his book. So one of the most important places that he looked at was the Galapagos Islands. So the Galapagos Islands are a bunch of some of them are tiny, minuscule islands off the coast of South America. Quite a bit off the coast of South America. And what he found was that there was dozens of different species, and they all had a lot of similarities. They all looked like finches. They were all finches, but they had different sized beaks in particular, and it all seemed to be linked to what they actually ate. So what he was looking at here was adaptations to niche, and the niches all being very slightly different in the different islands. But because they'd been separated, what you were finding was that they weren't just always going back to the same group. They were changing, they were adapting. So he came up with the idea that this different adaptations must have started with them all actually being the same, and it's the first time that we're looking at a common ancestor. So taking that further, we have kind of facts that kind of played into this. So what we know is that individuals in a species are going to vary. We've talked about this like the last two sets of things. It's all about variation. And there will always be competition if there's any limited resource. So that would be anything that they need, anything that they want, that is not in complete unlimited supply, there will be competition. So the result is that the ones that are the best competitors, the ones that are best getting that particular limited resource, they're the ones that will breed, and therefore they're the ones that pass on the variation that they have that's heritable. And you look at that and you go, well, that makes perfect logical sense. It was not seen as that really before. And this leads to the theory of natural selection. And be very clear here, this is a scientific theory. Doesn't mean that we are saying we don't think that's the case. What we mean is we have put everything we can throw at it. It fits every single piece of information that we have, and therefore it is the one that we are currently working with, because let's face it, in science there is always the potential for change, but this one works, and this is the one we're using. So there are a couple of big important things in the theory, and one of them is selective pressure. And what we mean by selective pressure is something that pushes a particular individual to either survive or not survive. So if you have a selective advantage, so one of those advantageous mutations, say, that makes it more likely to survive, then that's going to happen. If you have an adverse or a disadvantageous mutation which puts you in a selective disadvantage, then that's going to be not passed on. So anything you can think of from your lists of factors, from abiotic and biotic, from right back at the beginning of this unit, that potentially is a selection pressure. So it could be anything to do with the environment, it could be anything to do with things like disease, it could be predators, grazing in terms of biotics, it could be a new species coming in, anything which gives you an advantage, that's got pressure. So here's the process, okay, which you need to be able to talk through. So the most important thing is that you start with more offspring than the environment can support, because you need to have competition, okay? And then you need to have some form of selective pressure. whether that's competition or whether that's something to do with, say, predators or grazers or disease or anything else, but something will remove some individuals and allow other individuals to succeed. Okay, those individuals give the name to the natural selection process, which is used quite often, which is survival of the fittest. What we mean is that the best suited survives. Okay, and those individuals inbreed and they produce more offspring, and then there's pressure, and then the strongest or the best suited survive, and they breed and produce more offspring, and it goes on and on and on and round and round and round, and over a really long time, then what you have is the population will change. So you end up with more of them with the desirable traits, because more of them have the particular alleles that gave them the selective advantage. So what we've done is we've increased the frequency of the alleles that give the selective advantage, and that is natural selection. The potential impact is that eventually this could cause speciation, which is the last one, which I'm going to finish off next.